Hey TCC Kids, you know how much I love to bake? Well, I'm back at it again. This time I want to make some yummy bread. But I have a little problem. I can't seem to find any flour or yeast anywhere. Usually I can just go to the grocery store, pick some up, and bring it back home. But they're all out. It's crazy. This is the bread crisis of 2020. Okay. Maybe I'm being a little dramatic. It's not really a crisis, but that does remind me of something in our story today. In Joseph's time, there was a famine in Egypt. That means there was a shortage of food. The difference is they didn't just have to wait a little while for the grocery stores to get more food, and they couldn't just order things on Amazon Prime. If there wasn't any food, there wasn't any food. A lot of people would have died if it wasn't for what God helped Joseph do. Let's see what happened in our Gospel Project video.
Jacob and his family were in trouble. They did not have enough food to eat. No one had enough food to eat. So when Jacob learned that there was food in Egypt, he sent 10 of his sons to buy some grain. His son Benjamin stayed home. In Egypt, Joseph was in charge of giving out food. The brothers came to him and bowed down. Joseph knew who they were, but they did not recognize him. Joseph remembered his dreams of his brothers bowing down to him. Those dreams from long before were coming true. Joseph decided to test his brothers. "I think you are spies," Joseph told them. "You are here to spy on the land." But the brothers said, "No, we are not spies, we are brothers. There were 12 of us, but our youngest brother is at home with our father, and another brother is dead." Joseph put his brothers in prison for 3 days. Then he said, "Bring your youngest brother back to me to prove that you are not spies. But one of you must stay here." The brothers went home with food for their families, and one of them stayed in Egypt. They told their father everything that had happened, and their father was very upset. But when all the food was gone, Jacob asked his sons to go back to Egypt. So the brothers returned to Egypt with their brother Benjamin. They took money to pay for their food, and they took a special gift for Joseph. Joseph invited all of the brothers to his home for a meal. After the meal, Joseph sent away all of his attendants. He cried and told his brothers, "I am Joseph, your brother. You sold me into Egypt, but do not be afraid. God sent me here so I could save your people, a remnant, from the famine." Joseph told his brothers to go home and bring their families back to Egypt, where they would have enough food. On the way to Egypt, God spoke to Jacob in a vision. A vision is like a dream, but Jacob was awake. God said, "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you back to this land." Jacob's family was blessed in Egypt, but Jacob got older and died. Now Joseph's brothers were afraid Joseph would punish them for what they did to him.
Oh no!
Joseph said, "You planned evil against me. God planned it for good, so many people could live." Then Joseph comforted his brothers and spoke kindly to them. God had a plan for Joseph's life. He allowed Joseph to suffer to rescue a whole nation. In a greater way, God planned for Jesus to suffer so that many people from all nations would be saved from sin.
As we're seeing in our lesson today, God takes suffering and some bad things in our life and can turn them into something beautiful. So we're going to illustrate that here with a little activity today. So what I have in this bowl here are broken pieces of crayons that have been used and even messed up, And so we can't really use them to color a picture, but we're gonna do something with them. So I also have a sheet of wax paper here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take these broken pieces of crayons and we're gonna sprinkle them all over this wax paper. These crayons have been through a lot. They've been broken, they've been used, but now guess what? We're gonna add some more pressure to them. We're gonna add some more heat. So I'm gonna flip this wax paper over top of the crayons, and now it's time to add some heat and some pressure. This is a hot iron, so let's see what happens here. All right, we are melting these on. We are adding pressure and heat to crayons that have already been broken. So there we go. Now we have to let it dry just for a couple minutes. So I'll set that here and you'll get to see it shortly. But that reminds us of our lesson today. Joseph, he went through a lot of stuff. He was betrayed by his brothers. He was sold into slavery. He was put into prison because he was lied about. But the cool thing is that even through all of that suffering, God was with him. And God used all of it to make something beautiful in his life, just like he did with Jesus Christ. Think about the suffering that Jesus went through, right? He was sold for 30 pieces of silver. He was betrayed. He was put on a cross. He died. But the beautiful thing is, he rose from the dead, victorious over sin and death, and he gives us the opportunity to be part of his family. And that is truly something beautiful, indeed, even out of suffering. So, what do you think? Let's take a look at our picture. After it has dried, we now have a beautiful masterpiece of colors that we can hang on the wall, put in our bedroom, or give as a gift. But it started off as broken pieces of crayons that had been used and messed up, and now it has been turned into something beautiful. So let's remember that in our lives, through suffering or any of the bad things that may happen, God is right there with us, and he can turn our brokenness and our suffering into something beautiful for his glory and his glory alone.
So in our story today and through our video, we see that God had Joseph in Egypt to establish a remnant, and he used that remnant to save his family and many other people. In a similar way, we see that God used Jesus' suffering to save people, including us, from salvation from sin. If God can use Joseph and Jesus' suffering, can he not use our suffering? Absolutely he can. God can do anything that he wants to do that's within his character. And how gracious is he that he cares about us more than he cares about flowers and the birds and the trees. And we can hand over our worry and our suffering to him and let him use it for his glory and our good. Let's spend some time together in prayer as a family about how God wants to use us and our suffering